But all right, Jake, welcome to the Shooting Cars podcast. We have a lot to talk about today. Super excited to have you on the pod. First Zoom podcast that we've ever done. So I guess you're the first there, first frontier.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
So first of all, what you wanted to talk about an event. What event did you want to talk about?
So I'm throwing together an event out in Colorado at IMI Motorsports, where it's based off of people that have gotten to know each other over the internet, mostly through Twitter, but basically getting about 30 drivers together. All the staff is just going to be thrown together of people that we met off the internet, and that was the most central location to everybody, which is odd because most of us are going to end up driving 16 hours there, but it's almost, I don't want to final out, but it's almost like final bout type idea, but
Yeah.
not really requirements, just come out, have a good time party.
So if it's a drift event and it's out, what track is it again?
It's IMI Motorsports in Colorado. I forgot what the exact name of the town was, but we're planning it for August 14th.
So could people still get in on this, or is this a closed off event?
Oh yeah, people can still get in on this. Pretty much just send me, message me, say, hey, I'll hang out with people from the and we'll throw you into the driver's list. I don't want to set a set price on it just yet, but I believe it'll be roughly $100 to drive.
Okay.
So it's also very affordable for most events.
Well, yeah, that's super affordable. How long is the event itself? Just one day, or?
Yeah, just one day. It's a Saturday, so I figure wake up, throw a driver's meeting, and just go out there and shred all day. Is the game plan.
What kind of, I guess, area is it? Like it's not a skid pad. It's an actual track.
Yeah, it's a actual go-kart track. So It's not going to be like super fast, but it's not going to be boring where there's just cones in a parking lot. There's an actual track layout and everything. So, and from what I've seen of the track, like granted it's a go-kart track, the entry looks like it's pretty fun. And then it just flows really nicely. I have a couple buddies out there, Matt Sixberry and Tyler Whitaker, that they drive there all the time. They live like 10 minutes away. So those are like the main guys helping me host this that we're going to.
Right. So is it going to be broken up into class, or is it just as many runs as you can get, or like what's that sort of breakdown?
It's pretty much, they call them bash events. So it's just going to be like a free for all, just get in as much driving as you can. I don't see a really need to put it into classes just because there's only going to be maybe 30 drivers there to begin with.
Right.
And it looks like we could probably fit all 30 cars on track at the same time.
Right.
So it's just big enough for that. But I think if we got into like 40 or 50, that's where we might do run groups.
Yeah.
But I don't expect it to be too crazy like that.
Right. And so with this event, what kind of specs are you looking for in a car? Is it just run what you brung, or is it like, what would someone need in order to participate?
It's pretty much just run what you brung, just for fun event. As long as your car is like in one piece for the most part, that's all I ask. I don't want to see 30 missile cars out there all at once, but I'm not asking for final bout quality, but I'm asking for your beat up piece of shit.
Right. Yeah.
So just make it look presentable, and I'm happy with it.
Okay. That's awesome. I think it's great that you're doing this for the community, because, events like Final Bout have gotten out of the reach of everyday people like us. Final Bout's a great event. I love Final Bout. It was one of my favorite events I've ever been to. But I think it is a little bit out of reach for someone who's a little bit less, I don't want to say less professional, but like, Final Bout's like teams, and there's preparation, and there's, all this stuff.
There's a whole lot that goes into Final Bout, and it's awesome to go and watch. I definitely appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing behind this, like, it's almost similar concept with, like, we brought a bunch of people from the internet together to come drive some silly go-kart track. Literally, that's the identical part.
Right.
After that, it's like, I don't care if you're like a style king or like I said, as long as your car is in one piece. And the goal is, like, since it's only $100 a driver, like, it doesn't cost terribly much to rent it out. I don't want to drop too many numbers in front of people, but like, there's almost no profit that's going on behind any of them.
Right.
So it's not in there to go and make money, but it's like the drivers are going to take care of renting the track, and then like media and staff are going to take care of like when we throw an after party, like burgers, dogs, cooking out, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So everybody's going to play their own role in this, and the only way it's going to work is if everybody works together on it.
Right. Hey man, if you
So,
need media coverage, you know my number.
oh yeah, definitely. That would be. I'm sure you would love to come out and watch this.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited, and I think, like I said, I'm excited to see sort of more grassroots events popping up, hopefully.
Oh yeah.
Because something I want to talk to you about, because how I want to talk to you about, like, how long have you been drifting, and like what's your story behind that?
So I've been drifting. Technically, this will be coming up on my 4th year of driving. But to be honest, my first 2 seasons, I only drove 3 events between those 2 years.
Right.
Then the third I took off, and then last year was my 4th year. So I've technically been driving for like 4 years, but last year I would say was more of my good rookie season because I really got out and drove a lot more.
And you have an S chassis, correct?
Yes, I have an S13. It's a coupe, still has flip ups on it. It has a 5.3 Suburban V8 in it, iron block.
Oh yeah.
Trying to avoid saying LS anymore because I know people get mad over that, and it's funnier to me that
Yeah.
it's even cheaper.
Yeah.
It makes all but a 275 wheel horsepower, and the car weighs 3,000 pounds. And
Yeah.
just after that, it's set up nice.
Yeah. So I've always loved your car. I think it's great. And like people are like, oh, V8 swaps, whatever, but like yours is really well done. And I'm glad that you haven't overdone it. I think it's a really clean and simple build. And I mean, not that it's super simple to put a V8 into it, but like it's not, you see people come out here with like 1,000 horsepower cars that have only drifted in the Walmart parking lot.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's really cool to see a build like yours.
The whole game plan behind mine was I wanted to keep it as simple as possible, which I did kind of go ridiculous on a couple things in the past. Like I've changed my car setup so many times, and then by the time last season came around, I realized how good it was to have a super simple car. Like I went back to stock brakes on everything. I still run a welded diff, which I've talked to a handful of people, and they're like, "No, you need to get a limited slip." And my welded's been doing fine. I cracked one, but
Yeah.
that's the worst that's happened with it. That, and they're easy to find, so why do anything crazy? The 5.3, I've kept it borderline bone stock. I put a stock LS1 cam from a Camaro in it, not like hopped up or anything, but just a car grind instead of a truck grind, so the power band's a little better.
Right.
And then you have to do the car intake to make it fit under the hood because I don't want to look like an idiot with a cut hood. And then you have to do headers to make it fit, obviously.
Right.
Some people do manifold still, but you might as well do headers. It's worth the money.
Yeah.
And after that, there's no extras on that motor. It's maybe 150,000 mile motor.
Yeah.
I re-gasketed it before I put it in and just been sending it. So
I think the nice thing about the 5.3 is, I mean, if something breaks, there's probably a car in the parking lot that has that part.
oh yeah.
I mean, like finding parts is ridiculously easy.
Oh yeah, insanely easy. There have been times where I've gone to like an auto parts store and they'll have like valves, lifters, rockers on the shelf.
Yeah.
Which, like, knock on wood, I haven't broken any of that yet, but just everything is insanely accessible. Water pumps, fuel injectors, anything, you name it, it is on the shelf. And that's what really drew me to it, is everything's on the shelf for it. I've had a couple people be like, you should drive an SR, you should build an SR for it, like swap out the V8 for an SR, or even JZ. And it's like, the second that I do that, I just threw half of the reason why my car is so easy to work on out the window.
Right.
And I understand it. I like the way those motors sound, but a V8 doesn't sound bad either.
I love the sound of the V8, but I think a lot of people are like, they'll get like a Chaser or they'll get a 1J or 2J and they're like, oh, parts are easily accessible. Like online, you can find parts all the time and like you can overnight them and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but like when you're misfiring on the side of the road in Indiana,
right? Yeah.
O'Reilly's isn't going to have like 1JZ parts.
No, I mean, you might luck out and they might have 2JZ parts. I don't know how many parts are compatible between the two.
Yeah.
Even at that, it's such a stretch because the last chassis, I believe, that had a JZ was either the GS or the IS 300.
Yeah.
and the newest ones for those are still mid 2000s, I want to say,
Hmm.
maybe a little closer to late 2000s, but that's over 10 years ago by now.
Yeah.
So
The 5.3, I think it's still being built, no?
yeah, they're still building the 5.3 to this day. They started building it in 98, and
God bless them.
23 years later, they're still have it going.
Well, that's great for parts availability though. And I've been trying to focus on that a little bit more in my reviews. Like I just drove a Q7 with the 3-liter supercharged V6 from Audi that they've put
Yeah.
in literally everything. And I
Oh, no
actually I
way.
thought of that. I was like, it's so nice because you could probably go to any junkyard and find that V6 and pull parts off of if you need it.
Right.
Yeah, it's a huge game changer having parts availability not on the internet but down the street.
Yeah, that is definitely a huge help for everything like that. And I've realized because I always over prepare for all the events that I go to, and I realized that if I have like everything motor wise, I could basically rebuild my car in the parking lot. Like
Right.
even to the point where if I broke a spring on a coilover, I have a spare set of springs that I bring with me.
Yeah.
I think if I broke a dampener, that's where I would be screwed. But everything else, I pretty much have all the spare parts to go through my car one way or another.
Yeah.
And plus, I bring nuts and bolts, every single size I could think of, all in like a giant. It's almost like one of those shop things, but I have it so that it can close and lock. But as long as I can rebuild everything else in the pits, if I need something motor wise, I guarantee it's on the shelf within five
Yeah.
miles,
Yeah. Which is
which is
great. And
incredible.
there's something so nerdy. I spent pretty much all last summer helping my friends with their spec Miata. And the big
Mhm.
spec Miata guys, they weld these like custom carts that have a transmission at the bottom and then all the gaskets like in the middle and then like like a new head on the top. It's like custom built for this, and
Wow.
they're just like wheeling like literally the drivetrain of a Miata out of their trucks. And I want to build one of those so bad. So, but that's me
Wow.
right there.
Oh yeah. As soon as you like bringing a spare motor and trans and all that with you, that's a little
Yeah.
extra. Like I think the biggest thing I bring with me that's a spare is a differential. And
Okay.
even at that, like it's an S13 diff. They're
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
So
Did you do the V8 swap yourself or no? I can't remember.
yeah, I did the V8 swap myself, which honestly, when I was doing it, I wasn't the most mechanically inclined at the time, but as much as it seems like such a big thing to put a V8 in, as long as you have an engine hoist, it's a bolt-on affair. Like it's really nothing too crazy other than hammering out the trans tunnel.
I was gonna
Uh,
say, so what was the hardest part of the V8 swap?
being able to afford it. Uh,
Really? Because everyone's like, oh, LS is so much cheaper, especially the
yeah,
RX-7 community. Everyone's like, oh, LS is way cheaper. And I'm like, I don't know if it is.
honestly, and I tell everybody that asks me about this, if you aren't willing to spend at least grand to get it done, you won't do it the right way and you'll have issues.
Yeah.
And that's like to me, that's bare minimum. I built my own harness, so like that's kind of time thrown out the window,
Oh,
but it'll just
tons of
nickel and
time.
dime the life out of you.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people, you can put together a good list, but you're always going to forget something on the list, and then you're going to run into something else. And there's just little things here and there. Like I still have truck coils on my car.
Yeah.
Uh, but when I got the intake, I didn't realize I needed injectors. There was enough information on the internet to get it done, but I think I was still kind of towards the newer side of it when it was getting popular.
Right.
So finding all the information out there for everything was the hardest part, was another hard part as well.
So speaking of that, I wanted to talk to you about, I mean, how long have you had your S13?
I've had this S13 since 2014. So it's 7 years now, coming up on that in like March.
Did you have one before that?
I had one for a year. It was a
Okay.
rusty one. It was I put 3 KAs in it and blew all three of them. And it was one of those things. I had enough money to buy an SR, and I was just scrolling through Facebook one night. This was a thing. I saw a car pop up for sale for $2,000,
Yeah.
and I was like, I'd rather get a clean car than an SR swap. And that's dating like that was back in 2014 when SR swaps were still going for like 2-3 grand,
So that's what I
which
wanted to
is
talk to you about
crazy.
was how have you seen like the S chassis market change in the time that you've been around it, since really 2013.
Yeah, the prices on them are insane. I think 2015 was probably the lowest point, and then after
Interesting.
that, I think that's when people started to realize like, hey, these cars are kind of getting rare, so prices started slowly going up. Like when I got into the game, brick headlights were going for I want to say $300 for a pair of clean ones,
Jeez, yeah,
and last week I'm seeing sets go up for sale for 1600, and yeah, that's over four times. That's over five times the cost
yeah,
of what they used to be. And back in like 13 and 14, you could pick up an SR car on coils with a welded diff for $3,000.
yeah,
And at the time, it cost $3,000 to do the SR swap, so it made sense to
yeah.
like go out and buy a fully done car. But now people are wanting like 7, 8 grand for an SR car, or even $6,000 if you're lucky.
Have you seen or have you noticed the quality of S chassis going up, or have they kind of stayed the same? The prices are just going up.
Uh, that's a tough one. I think I'd like to say that I've seen quality improve, but somehow the internet still makes me double think saying that, because there's always the guys that hack one up in a way that it's you just don't want to look at it, you don't want to talk
Yeah,
about it, and I try not to give them credit. So I guess in my eyes, I've blocked stuff like that out. So
yeah,
I I like the positive side of things. Like worrying about somebody else's piece of shit is why it only
right.
stresses you out. They don't care. They sleep fine at night. Why am I mad that they did something dumb to a 240? That it's theirs. I didn't pay for that.
Yeah,
So I've noticed more cars getting better, but that's because I've also been not paying attention to the bad cars.
yeah. I because that's what I've noticed with the FD RX-7 prices have gone skyrocketing.
Oh yeah.
And what's nice is that people are actually like taking care of them now because they are like worthy cars. Where,
Yeah.
2015, 2014, when I was looking for my car, I was finding these clapped out FDs for 6, 7 grand. I mean, like it was like
Mhm.
pretty affordable at the time. My friend just bought one for 21 grand with a blown motor. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it's a really clean car, really, really
Yeah.
clean car, had coolant seals fail. But still, I mean, like for a roller,
Yeah. Yeah.
21 grand. I mean, he's getting the motor rebuilt, and that's like that's not cheap. So
No, not at all. I've seen 240 rollers. I think the most expensive 240 roller I've seen was 4 or 4,500 with a
wow.
cage. And I like for 4,500, I'm still stuck on the old prices. I'm like, why doesn't that car run and drive with like a 300 wheel SR
Right.
and full interior? Like that's what that car would be worth in my eyes. But
Yeah.
and like shells used to be, I remember when people would flame somebody for selling a shell for over $1,000 if it didn't have a cage, and now we're up to $4,000.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
It's insane. I mean, with a lot of Japanese cars, that's the way these days. But I think the S chassis and the FD have been like the two, besides obviously the Supra and NSX, whatever. But
Yeah,
like those two chassis have just they're going to the moon.
right. I can't speak on this like too much, but I've also heard that R2 prices have just skyrocketed since they've become legal, which I mean makes sense that supply and
Yeah.
demand. But I heard Skyline prices used to be not too far off of 240 prices. So I
Yeah.
always joked with buddies like, let's stuff a R32 in a storage container in Canada and then go pick it up when it's legal. And
Yeah.
I'm sure there's maybe a couple people that wanted to do that as well. But now Skylines are going for like 10 grand minimum, and you don't even get a turbo, and it's rear wheel drive.
Yeah. I had a friend. He picked up his, I think for 9 grand, like right when they became legal. This was
Yeah.
2017 or 2016. And it was like 9 grand
Mm-hmm.
turbo rear wheel drive. It wasn't a GTR, but I think it was like 9 grand with the taxes and everything. And so when I was looking for a new car in August, I was looking at R32s and Laurels and Chasers, and they've just gone up incredibly as well. I mean, like, 5, 10 grand more. They're asking like 15 now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Those, yeah, all of the prices of Japanese cars are just getting out of hand.
yeah. So speaking of like changes and stuff, you've obviously been in the drifting world. especially here in the Midwest for quite some time. How have you seen that change, the drift scene change since 2013?
Since 2013, it's kind of like I think the whole final bout movement made a big impact on that. I forgot what year that
100%.
came around,
Yeah.
but I think that was around 2014 or maybe 2015 or yeah, 2014 or 15 is when final bout initially came around, I believe. Um, so I was right on the edge of like people didn't really care about style too much, but being in Chicago, everybody here always cared about style mostly. Whereas I had buddies out in Iowa that they were just like, oh, just slap it together and drive it.
Yeah.
And I didn't really know too many drift indie guys at the time. But most of the quality I've seen come out of them has always been pretty decent cars. Uh, and then St. Louis, I hate to talk about St. Louis, but they're the second Florida in my opinion. They're not
Really?
far off. Yeah, honestly, it's they're doing something down in St. Louis. Their water must be different, but it's just not good.
Yeah.
Uh, I won't talk shit too much because there are some decent cars out down there. There's some guys that hold it down really well. I really do like driving the Gateway Road Course. That is such a fun track, and I know that's been around for a long time. But it was like when I started getting into drifting, that was a kind of more happening thing. And then it just dwindled off for so many years that they would maybe hold 1 year or one event a year on the road course.
Isn't Formula D down in St. Louis?
Yep. So the first year of Formula D, they held it on the big road course. And then I don't know if it was the second or third year, but then they transitioned to a small, weird off section of the road course, and it's like half as fast.
Interesting.
Yeah. To me, it's not as fun to watch. I mean, drifting's drifting, so it's always fun to watch. But the real cool thing about the road course was Midwest Drift Union, that was still in existence. They would compete on the road course, and there were guys with, I'll say like 200 horsepower cars linking it, like not completely
Yeah.
like gutted out, but you can link that track with a stock KA if you drive it the right way. And the entry is about 80 to 100 miles per hour, so you're like fourth gear at that point. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure for those guys, definitely at least third gear. I had to be in third gear for it, but for guys with like 200 horsepower to link that track, and then you turn around and you see guys with 1,000 horsepower struggling on that track, it's kind of a funny thing. It's like,
Yeah.
I can definitely call somebody up and be like, hey, I've driven that track, I know how to do it. Not that
Yeah.
I was incredible at driving that track. I thought I did a pretty decent job, but being able to compare your driving to somebody professional and see like, okay, well they did that there, maybe I should try that there next time.
Yeah.
But the horsepower gap is just hilarious to me because there were a couple pro drivers that struggled to get it figured out, and even Pro 2 drivers that struggled to get it out. Meanwhile, people have been running that with KAs.
Yeah, a KA that pretty much wants to kill itself is
Oh yeah, definitely.
out
Or
there
even stock
shredding.
350Zs I've seen run that track. Stock BRZs run that
Yeah.
track. And those like BRZs are not fast cars to begin with, but to see them link a track like that
Yeah.
and then turn around and see a pro with 5 times as much horsepower struggle,
Yeah.
it goes to show like there's some talent that happens down there when you learn how to drive that track.
Yeah. Linking, for those of you who don't know, linking is like when you can actually transition in between and things like that, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you stop straightening up through every corner, and it's not like once you link it, you're putting the whole entire track together, whereas before, like not linking it would be you straighten up between sections.
Right. So it's like drift a corner, straight, 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 drift, straight, straight, where like
Yeah.
linking is actually, which it's so cool and gratifying to see, to watch someone, especially at like a bigger events, not link it, and then towards the end of the session or end of the day they start linking it. It's one of the
Oh
most
yeah.
gratifying things to see. I can't imagine how it feels.
Oh, it was honestly the greatest thing ever too, because Gateway was the first track that I had ever watched drifting at in real life, and that was I want to say in 2013, where they were just having a for fun event. I remember Simba drove it. That was the first time I ever found out who Simba was, and he's a legend in Chicago.
Mhm.
So like going from seeing him driving it And then being like, that was always my one big goal with drifting, is I wanted to drive the road course one day. Um, and being able to accomplish that last year and drive the road course, it's such a unreal feeling. It's like I've dreamed of this day for, what was that, 7 years now.
Yeah, it's the night
And to
before
finally
Christmas,
say,
man.
like, yeah, like, it was so good. It's
Yeah.
so cool too.
How do you feel
And that's the
about?
fastest track I've ever driven.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Well,
like
that's
I'm not gonna lie, like the whole night before, I was up all night. I'm like, I have to go 100 miles per hour and then I have to throw this. Like,
yeah.
it was just scary. Like, I got over it, but telling yourself that is kind of scary for the first time.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, talking speaking of like your first time and stuff, if someone wanted to get into drifting, say, someone listening to this has been kind of on the fence about it, they have a couple bucks to throw down, what's like a path that you recommend? Someone who wants to get into the sport.
So obviously you got to find a good rear wheel drive car. And my thing is reliability and easy to find parts. So I would say start off with like a 350Z. And even I've seen BRZs are kind of getting lower in price now. Not too low in price, but they're
Yeah.
getting into the affordable range.
I've also seen a
Uh,
handful of like Mustangs. Mustangs have been on the come up a little bit recently.
yeah, Mustangs are on the come up. I honestly can't tell you too much about Mustangs, but they come with good motors to begin with. I'm sure even that V6 in them could probably
Yeah.
throw down pretty decent.
I think it's a two valve V6 for the SN95, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how much power the V6s make. I wasn't ever a big Mustang guy, but the thing that's tough for me is they're not aesthetically pleasing in my eyes. Like, they're not terrible, but they're an awkward car to watch drift, I feel
Yeah.
like, because they just don't look right doing it. But more power to somebody.
Yeah.
So first, find a affordable rear wheel drive car. Um, Weld the diff in it, or if you can't weld the diff in it for, like, I believe torsion diffs, so like your IS 300s, I think you have to get a limited slip or do something goofy there. Um, After that, get really good brakes. Uh, Throw some oils on it, and even if you got like Megan Racing or ISR Performance, just something that's reasonably affordable to get you into the idea of how to run the car.
Hmm.
Don't make too many adjustments on like the coils, like set the height and set the clicks on it.
Yeah.
I generally like a really stiff car. I've heard that the natural progression for me is I started with my car as stiff as possible. And I still like my car stiff because I think it looks cool in photos.
Yeah.
But generally, the more grip that you add, or the more you soften everything, the more grip the car is going to have. So I guess that's also helps when you only
Hmm.
make 275 wheel horsepower, that it makes my car look cool.
Yeah.
Um, After that, yeah, like I said, get decent pads and rotors on it, because as much as people want to go and buy AutoZone crap and it's like lifetime warranty or whatever, it's not, to me, it's not helpful to learn. I don't care how many sets of pads you go through and how many times they'll warranty them. Put a good set of pads and rotors on it and you can feel a difference in a car. That's what kind of justified me downgrading my brakes.
Hmm.
Is I went from Z32 calipers down to stock calipers, but on the Z32 calipers I was running like AutoZone pads. And then when I got my stock calipers, I ran power stop pads and they
Okay.
stopped just as hard.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the thing I learned in doing that, is a good set of pads and rotors will work just as well as a shitty set of pads and rotors on a bigger brake,
Yeah.
which
It,
kind of
it's
makes
it's
sense to me.
interesting that you've said all these things to do and not one of them was add power immediately, which I think is what people think they need to do.
Right. And I'm the I don't want to say the worst preacher for saying this, because I instantly went from a K to a 5.3. But in my defense, it's only 275 wheel and it's been able
Right.
to hang perfectly with everybody. So just stay around stock power. Maybe like if you're SR, yeah, turn the boost up a little bit, but you really, all you need is about 300 horsepower to really hang with everybody. And if you set up a 275 wheel horsepower car right, you can catch up with everybody.
Yeah.
So um, that, and like figuring out a good tire size for your car. As much as I hate the people that are running stock wheels and like stock tire sizes and just whatever pull offs that they can find, once you get into a realm of like, I realize 17-inch wheels are probably the most affordable ones to run.
Okay.
So getting a good set of wheels and then putting a decent tire size on it really helps you learn with gripping up the car more. You don't want to go overkill on it. I don't want to see some guy throw like 265s on a 200 wheel horse car. You
Yeah.
could probably figure it out one way or another, but the tires might be at 100 psi. So once you like talk with some people, learn the car a little bit more, and then find a good tire size, and then find a good tire brand. I really love Kendas. I run Kendas on the front and the back of my car, which even at that, people have told me I could run bigger tires on the back. I'm at a tire that I'm comfortable at.
Yeah.
I run about 40 psi and two 45/40s in back. So that's not a terrible range, but there's guys out there that they'll throw 265s on and run them up to 100 psi and go drifting all day. And like, to me, that doesn't make much sense.
Yeah.
I'm sure it works, but like that tire's got to be so slippery at that point. But Kendas do grip really well. It's a weird formula to figure out.
How important is it consistency wise to stick with the same tires? Because I know a lot of people, like, before an event they just drive down to Chihuahua Tire and buy the used tires that are hanging out around back for like 10-15 bucks.
So I think when somebody's learning, it's not as critical.
Okay.
But once you have a couple events under you, then that's where you start to feel tires a little bit more. Because the first couple times when you're still figuring it out, I'm sure most people couldn't tell you how well, unless their car like doesn't spin tires at all, they probably can't tell you how well gripped it is or how
Mhm.
terribly gripped it is.
Right.
So learning to drive and then get your tires figured out later. Tires will always be there. Just don't worry. I wouldn't worry about tires first right off the bat.
Where would you like to see the sport go? Because right now, I would say it's not really, I don't want to say it's mainstream, but it's definitely a lot more popular than it used to be. Where do you want to see the sport go?
See, I would like to see drifting continue to grow. And I'm going to quote from Keep Drifting Fun. Uh, it's just a wave and we're still riding it.
Mhm.
And I feel like drifting is just consistently, I don't think there was like an overnight, like, hey, everybody, let's get into drifting. It's just growing at a gradual pace over time. And people are, the thing I don't like to see is people coming into the sport and taking advantage of it for like being swagged out and like cool for doing it and whatnot,
Yeah.
which unfortunately it's going to happen. It's a cool thing without people trying to be cool about it. So, like, there's that. But I want to see drifting keep growing. I still want to see people come into drifting. I want to see less shitheads out there, I guess is the best way that I could say it.
Yeah.
Go and do it for the right reasons because I mean, like, it's fun. If you're out there and you're not having fun or you're not trying to have fun, the second that you stop having fun with anything, probably shouldn't be doing it anymore.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and that
So,
goes for many just parts of your life, but especially with
yeah,
drifting and really any motorsport. If you're not enjoying it, it's really, it's a completely different, it's no longer the same thing.
right. It's very so I'm also a spotter for I'll call him a Pro 3 driver, and I've realized like I don't mind watching it. It's not my most favorite thing to watch competition, but he's a really good buddy of mine,
Mhm.
and I think he's a really good driver, and I want to see him do well. There's just a whole lot of competition that gets into things where it's just, well, that's a silly rule. Well, that's kind of dumb.
Yeah.
Like putting rules and like I've realized putting money on the line for a drift event is the worst thing I have ever seen because everybody's attitude changes the second that a dollar goes in the front of their face.
Right.
And it's such a sad thing to see that happens in drifting. I understand it. It gets people like it attracts people and whatnot. What they're doing with clutch kickers, yeah, it's fun to watch. But once you get into the middle of it, all of the drama and all of the like not so much fights, but just the attitudes all kind of change. For the people that don't change an attitude, they're awesome to see go drive. But for
Yeah.
the people that get into it and they're like angry and aggressive over shit, there's no need for that. It's drifting. It's a dumb sport to begin with. We're all spending money. We're all burning tires. We're burning
Yeah.
gas. like all of us took time out of our lives to make this happen to be there. So why you got to be a dick about it? Or
Yeah.
why you got to like run through somebody?
Yeah.
Like they were just as hard on their car as you did on yours, or
Yeah.
their team did, which if you do that, you're disrespecting a team either way.
Hmm.
So
Speaking of which, how do you feel about teams, and what are some teams to like look out for? Like if someone wants to get into like Dynasty, they drift all the older style 70s Toyotas. They're one of my favorites. But like what are some
yes,
good teams to watch and pay attention to?
I will say I'll plug Team Breaking because they're some of my best friends. They're a really good team to watch. They're a huge team, to be honest. They're so it's almost kind of hard to keep up with them.
Hmm.
I feel like I don't want to say Risky Devils. Risky Devils been around. They're a good team. They've kind
That's
of
like an
established
OG
themselves.
Chicago team too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Um, Proceed. They're an OG Chicago team, which some of them are former Risky Devil drivers. Um, Cool Running, which is a group of kids with BRZs and FRSs, and to me, it's the funniest. But I'll always say this: they are the best guys driving those cars with the least amount of horsepower.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
I don't think any of them are turbo. None of them have any power adders. It's just like intake and exhaust at most, and some of them have like E85 tunes. But
Interesting.
I finding two guys to shred BRZs is hard, and
Yeah.
they found four. Like, and they're
Yeah.
all generally in the same region. That's impressive to me.
Yeah. That
Uh,
is impressive.
though I've been trying to work on a team. We haven't really taken off too far yet. I don't want to plug it too much. We're calling ourselves Old English, but it's one of those things that it's you want to be a team. It's a cool thing to be a team, but you don't want to overdo it and then come out with nothing. I
Right.
feel like that's the one issue a lot of people have ran into. So
Yeah.
that's really I haven't talked about it a lot because it's in the works. We want to get this done, but I don't want to just boost a social media page and then we're not driving together and we're not doing stuff together. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that I don't like is, and granted, I'm talking about myself in a way, but I'm not boosting anything too hard. But all these kids want to get in and just be a team right off the bat, and you don't know how you drive together. Like I've driven with both of the guys in Old English at the same event, but we really haven't hopped in together a lot. So that's the
Yeah.
one progress I'd like to see us make. But you have kids that just they're like, hey, I bought a 240, you got a 240, you got a 240, you got an RX-7, let's be a team.
Yeah.
And none of their cars match like whatsoever.
I think since
And
we're both similar age and we're both from the same area, there's definitely like a couple of years where like everyone was trying to make a car club, and it's still happening kind of these days, but it's like Sad Boys Club, and it's like, or like,
yeah,
whatever, this and that. And I think everyone wants to form it, but no one wants to put in the legwork to be a good team, if that makes
right.
sense.
I 100% agree with that. And to be honest, I'm not trying to attack anybody on this, but I've realized all the like I'll say it's sad boy click. I'm just throwing a
Yeah.
name out there, not like plugging
I
anybody.
don't even
Just
know if that's a real name, but like it
right. That's
sounds
what
like
I'm
one.
saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm specifically saying somebody's team, but I'm not trying to. But like that whole, I don't know. There's something that I haven't got into like the emo rap scene that's been going on. I know a
Yeah.
lot of people like it, but it's just one of those things for me. I just can't get into it. So on top of that happening, and then they're trying to relate that into drifting and like, oh, sad boy click swag, and like,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Like to me, that's weird,
Yeah.
and
No, I've
that's
definitely noticed
yeah,
that too. And that always grinds my gears when someone's I'm just waiting for someone to drift the car and the banner just says clinically depressed or something. Just like something of
right.
the sort.
That's
Like
yeah.
I'm just
They're
waiting.
hitting the nail on the head with it. Like no beating around the bush, just seasonal depression.
You know what
I'm
would
not
actually
calling
be a
anybody out. I'm yeah, not trying to get
seasonal
after anybody.
depression.
Like just like straight up, what's your issue? And you just put it on your banner.
Yeah. You just put all of your emotional baggage down the spine
Yeah.
of your rear window. Like everyone does
Oh
those
yeah.
slap stickers.
Yeah. Honestly, like I don't mind slaps, but my car used to be the entire back window used to be covered top to bottom. And I never realized it because like you don't really look out your back window too much while drifting.
Yeah.
But there was one day that I looked at it, I'm like, that's obnoxious.
Yeah.
Like I just want a simple car. I don't want anything crazy, and that goes back to me being just I'm a simple guy at the end of the day.
I think we're past the sticker bomb phase, which was like big in the early 20
Yeah.
teens. I'm glad that that's kind of dying off.
Oh yeah. I still see that like once every couple events, and it's just like, damn,
Yeah.
it's kind of like that brings me back a little bit,
I was
but
gonna
it's also
say
like bad memories of bringing me back.
it's like seeing a Nintendo DS or something. You're like, oh man, I remember when that was cool.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, what a time to be alive.
Yeah. But I just thought of it. Maybe someone should start a drift team, the therapists, and just chase
Ooh.
after all the depressed kids.
Oh my god. That we're riding a line there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I'm glad. What trends are you glad to see gone? I'm glad sticker bombing's leaving.
Yeah, I'm
Wide
glad
body
sticker
cars
bombing.
are kind of going away a little bit.
Ooh, mine's like one of the widest wide body cars.
Is it riveted on with self tappers?
Um, yeah.
All
Well,
right.
not self tappers, but
Okay.
there's screws that hold it on. See, I've like I said, with going through so many parts on my car, I've gone through, let me count real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sets of overs on my car,
Oh
5 different
wow.
style overs.
Oh,
So
different
there's a bunch of
styles.
holes, and not only that, but every time I mount it, I have to either make a new hole or find a way for an old hole to work. So it's getting pretty close to Swiss cheese. So hopefully, knock on wood, this is the last set I have on the car
Yeah.
for a while at least.
But what are some
Uh,
other trends that you're glad are dying?
um, People not running body kits on cars. And I'm not just saying like body kits as aftermarket, like people that don't run bumpers. I just can't stand it.
Yeah.
Big wings. I think big wings is finally on the downhill slide.
Yeah.
Like it's getting there, but then there's also chassis mounted wings that are kind of like as things on the trunk is going down, chassis mount wings are rising up, which it's like why? Like we're almost there. We were so close. We almost had nobody running these big ass, ugly ass wings anymore.
We almost
And
did it.
then chassis mounts just like, hello everybody. Like now here's a new way to mount a big wing. Like, damn it. We were
Yeah.
so close.
I think chassis mounted wings have their place in the world, but when you don't have any
Yes.
engine mods or you're not like a time attack driver, I think it's a little
Mhm.
bit much.
Yeah, like I definitely understand where chassis mount wings are effective on other cars.
Yeah.
You don't need that downforce in drifting, and you don't go fast enough to use that downforce in
Yeah.
drifting.
Yeah. Like
I
I'm
think,
thinking like the Grid Life series, Grid Life Time Attack, you see a couple chassis mounted ones, but there was
yeah.
a car that wrecked on Road America doing 167. So he needed that chassis mount.
Oh
Did
yeah.
did you hear about that Civic that went off on Road America and Grid Life? This
I
was
don't
like
think so.
a year or two ago. It was pre-COVID for sure. But the front straightaway Road America, he had brake failure and went into the wall. He left the track at like it was either 167 or 177, and he walked away.
Wow.
Yeah, it was nuts. That was like big news with Grid Life a while ago. Must have been 2 summers ago. But yeah,
I th- I think I might have heard a little bit about that.
it was a
Honestly, the way
Canadian
that
team.
safety, okay. Yeah, the way that safety is improved is also like incredibly impressive, I would
Yeah,
say. Um, Granted, like it's drifting and a lot of the tracks that I drive, I don't want to say they're lax on being safe, but for the most part, if you're not like when I went down to Gateway, yeah, they were pretty strict on tech because they only run that track like once a year and it's 100 miles per hour roughly.
right.
So
Yeah, yeah,
you have to be strict on tech. I've seen guys flip their cars there and it's not a pretty sight.
yeah.
Uh,
It's a little bit different than
especially like
yeah.
uh, yeah, it's totally different than like grip racing and everything. But
Yeah, or I was gonna say even like
yeah,
Great Lakes Dragway, the skid pad, you're not really doing like 200-mile-an-hour
oh yeah,
entries.
no, you're not going terribly fast there. Like there's places where you can be more lax on safety.
Yeah.
Okay, so before I hopped on, I saw a photo and there was an RX-7 that was leading in a 350Z following. I don't think it was a competition event. It was just some parking lot with cones out. And you got to be aware is where I was going with this, because the RX-7 just pulls a gap on this 350Z, and he's about 100 feet plus ahead of him, like far enough that the Z probably could see that the RX-7 spun out, and then the Z was coming up on him. But the Z had so much heat behind him, like he was coming in pretty fast.
Yeah.
He just tried to spin the car out, which I can't be too mad at that. But he ended up putting the back end of the car into the passenger door of the RX-7.
Oh, geez.
And the RX-7 looked like it almost like the door is completely done. It doesn't even close right. You probably almost bent the frame on the car. So as much as safety is important, awareness is important as well.
Yeah.
So,
and not overcooking it and all that stuff. Because
yeah.
I think it's definitely it's a different level of safety with drifting, because like the whole point of the sport is to kind of make your car do the thing it wasn't designed to do.
Yeah.
Which it's
Yeah,
interesting.
exactly.
It's like it's controlled freaking out, essentially.
Oh yeah, I think that's the most fun part about it too.
Yeah.
And I was talking with some other friends the other day, and like we just got on the topic of like what's fun about drifting, and the whole concept of like I don't have to race against a clock is the best thing I could go for.
Yeah.
As much as I can watch like racing in times like that where like you're actually racing people or racing a clock,
Yeah.
like I can watch that and I can understand what they're doing, but I couldn't tell you the fastest way around a single track, even if I had like a whole entire day to figure it out. So like that's where I struggle, is knowing the fastest lap around somewhere, because everywhere basically has somewhat known of the fastest lap. I don't understand it. Maybe if I followed a couple people, I could figure it out, but why?
Yeah.
I
think
drifting, you don't have.
Drifting is just this amazing medium where it's like, I mean, you're like literally right on the cusp of spinning out, but you're not. You're like riding this incredibly thin line of about to crash at every single moment, but you yourself made it so you didn't. I think that's like the glory of it, at least in my eyes.
Yeah, I hate to say there's an art behind it, but like truthfully there is.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of road course drivers that I'm sure that as much as they could understand drifting, they couldn't drift the same way that people that have been doing it for a while can. I mean, it's a learned talent. It takes time to hone it, and every day is practice. So
yeah. I think anyone looking to get into it too also should go to an event and ask for a ride along, because just the feeling of when the car unsettles itself and you're starting to slide is just an insane feeling that takes a little bit of getting used to, but that's the cool part. It makes your heart skip a beat.
Oh yeah. I think the way that it like, and this is how my car is set up, but it looks like it floats in media pictures. And like I said earlier, that's my favorite thing about it, is that it looks like it floats. Well, it feels like you're floating basically.
Yeah.
Like I've ridden cars that are gripped up, and those are like, I'm not going to say I'm scared of them, but they're definitely a scary feeling when you have a car that puts down 450 wheel horsepower and it's gripping the entire lap.
Right.
It's still sliding, they're still making smoke, but having a car that's gripped up is definitely a wild ride. But I enjoy having a car that just slips around.
Yeah.
To me, that's more fun.
So we'll close it out here. I want you to plug your event, because I think it's awesome, and tell the people how they can get in on it.
So it's we're calling it For the Bird Bash, because initially it started off people with Twitters that all of us just know each other, and we just wanted to get together and drive. It's out at IMI Motorsports in Colorado. We're planning to hold it August 14th is the game plan right now. It's going to be about 30 drivers. It should cost around $100, and there's no profit really going on. Pretty much us driving all day, and then for people that want to be involved with like media and staff, if your car doesn't drift or like just you want to come hang out for the day, we're definitely going to need people for that as well. So just find a way to get a hold of me, which is either Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, and I'm sure you could like drop some links or whatever of each of them. And then get a hold of me, and I'll just throw you into the list and be prepared to spend $100 if you're driving, or buy us burgers, dogs, buns, beers, any of them. If you're gonna be media or staff, but come out and have a good time.
Yeah, and all that stuff will be in the description if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, all that stuff, just head over to the YouTube video. What's your Instagram handle? In case
My
for
Instagram
audio.
handle is Jake Carpenter 4294.
Okay, so definitely go hit him up, send him a DM message, and hopefully you guys can get linked and start throwing cars around. That I'm really excited for that event. I'm really excited for it, and I think it's going to be awesome.
It's an odd one. I didn't really plan on doing this until like a couple weeks ago, so it's kind of thrown together, but it's only going to work if everybody involved works on throwing it together as well.
Yeah.
So,
and I think this could be a really cool sort of showcase to other people that you don't have to spend thousands of dollars and rent out this high tech facility.
yeah.
Grassroots drifting still exists between friends, and it's really cool that you guys met on Twitter. So it's going to be like a internet friends thing.
We're up to 20 drivers right now, so we're not really setting a cap, but we would like to keep it like below 40. But the fact that it's everybody's throwing this together, and like it's not the coolest facility in the world or even in the US, but it's a facility that's pretty regional to all of us, or reasonable for us to all get to. And all of us are going through the same hardships of trying to figure out how to get our cars out there. So it's all, and the whole event is just us throwing it together. It's not as much as it's me kind of overlooking all of this, it is everybody that's a part of it making this happen.
Yeah, which is awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jake, for coming on the podcast. And
thank you for having me.
I can't wait for the event.
Me neither.
All right. Take care, guys. Thanks for listening.